medically understood.
And we are in. Hello.
Hello. That was a very non-extreme entry into.
And we're in. Welcome to Extreme Sports by This Show.
Power.
What is that, a wrestling thing?
No, I don't know what I meant.
I thought you were like trained to do that kind of extreme sports wrestling.
Power.
Is that a reference to something? I don't get it.
I don't
well,
know.
anyway.
It's what a friend of mine used to shout it whenever he accelerated in the car. And I don't mean like accelerating 0 to 60 in like 3 seconds. I just mean press the accelerator. He just yelled, power!
Just like in a 20 zone, like going past the school.
To drive with. It was fun.
Well, that's exactly the kind of adrenaline that we're talking about today.
I'm tired already, mate. Tired.
In my research for extreme sports, I did find some kind of modern alternatives for the discerning middle-aged man. There were a lot of sofa-based sports, but I didn't really think that they kind of fell into the category that we were trying to explore. But yeah, there's a load of that. Like just a lot of it involves alcohol, though, so it's not really.
It's not my. Well, I mean, that'd be pretty extreme for me. Yeah. Extreme. See if a wedding happens. Yeah. No, I'll avoid those. But before we get into the whole real world of extreme sports, you went to an extreme event the other night.
I did, yeah. I went outside.
Tell me about it.
I went out into the wild.
In the big wild.
Don't do that very often. There's people out there. Awful affair. But yeah, I went to a language exchange here in my hometown.
Exchange.
Yeah, nobody wanted to talk to me because I burst in the door and just shouted power, and they all cowered in the corner. No, I thought that it's about time that I got certified for my Spanish. So I'm going to be doing an exam later this year. And I just needed to get some practice. I don't get a lot of practice in except for going to the supermarket because I work online. So I just wanted to have a bit more conversation practice, and I went to a language exchange, and it was nuts. Unfortunately, this happens in most places in Spain. You have this kind of expat like bubble, this local community, people from the UK, people from the US. They're usually English language teachers. And they're just a bunch of pissheads. It's the same in every city that you go to. You know, the reason for moving to Spain, or one of the reasons, is to kind of like you want to indulge a new culture and get away from the things that I remember from my hometown. Maybe it's different for other people, but in my hometown, there's always people in the pub telling the same stories on repeat. And just getting into drama and, you know, just all of that nonsense. And I wanted to leave that behind me. But that's exactly what I walked into, because it was set in a local Irish pub. Irish pubs over here, by the way, just mean that they just put like really low wattage bulbs in. So it's dark.
I think I've seen that one. Is it like on a corner? Is it the one where we kept seeing Gav?
Yeah. Maybe you've been there.
Was Gav there?
Yeah, no, he wasn't.
Oh,
well, he might have been. He might have been like shadowing me. But yeah, I met a couple of people from my dark past, and one of them was crying. Then she was going to punch someone. Yeah, it was just like I say, drama. Maybe they could find a way to make that into a sport. Like an extreme pub sport.
It sounds a bit like a sport. As a sober person going into that environment, it is a bit of a sport. It's dodging, mostly just dodging.
Yeah,
dodging people and their.
I did. I was quite athletic because I did have a pint, and then I immediately needed to go for a piss because I'm a middle-aged man, and I had to get to the other end of the bar, which is where they all congregate. And I had to try and get to the toilet without them seeing me, so I just made myself invisible. I'm quite good at doing that. I've been practicing that my entire life. I'm actually very good. Yeah. Being a small man, I've got that to my advantage. But I can just kind of slip through the people's legs and between the cracks in the floorboards, and no worries. Invisi Ben. Anyway.
Good work. I'm sorry, it was shit.
into into the world of extreme sports. What are you going to throw at? Extreme power. What are you going to offer up first? Because I've gone for Britain, and I think you've gone for a more global approach.
Well, yeah, I thought I'd talk about bungee jumping first, if that's all right. I've got a bit of a fear of bungee jumping at the minute because it's stag do coming up, and you know that I can't abide heights.
No.
And I'm slightly worried you're going to try and make me bungee jump.
Well, you're quite a deep sleeper, so if you wake up tied to a chair,
you guys can pay for it and everything, but there's no fucking way I'm doing it.
That's why we have to do it without your consent.
In Magaluf, 100 years ago, when I was there for some time, I did a vertical bungee jump, which I've never seen since. I think it was just something they roped up in Magaluf, and it was basically a crane, and you had like a clip and a bolt in a big lump of concrete, and they lifted the crane up, and I'm at the bottom, and then at some point someone pulls a bit of string and this clip undid, and you shot upwards towards a load of metalwork that was a crane. But
it sounds super safe and fun.
Yeah, I was so it wasn't like in one of them balls, it was just like in a harness. But I was so drunk and high at the time, I didn't really care. But that is the last time I'll ever go near a bungee. But I think the origins of bungee jump are quite interesting. Have you heard of the Pentecostal island Vanuatu? I know you have, actually, because I think we've mentioned it before.
I grew up there, yeah. That's right.
It's in Staines. No, also the happiest place on earth, apparently. It's famous for that as well.
Yeah, okay.
But Vanuatu, when like a lot of tribal cultures, the boys suddenly one day someone says, "You're a man now, so you've got to do something stupid," because this is what men do. So they get a bit pissed up and build like a big scaffold out of twigs, which you can see in that picture. It gets better than this. They then get some vines. So there's a couple of vines wrapped around their ankles, and these towers range up to 100 feet high. They have different platforms depending on how brave or stupid the diver is prepared to be, and they sort of go up in stages. And kids do this. Kids from the age of 5, they get a little bit high on some juice from a banyan tree, which is basically alcoholic sap, from what I can work out. It's one of a few drinks I have never tried. And climb up this tower. Then their mate basically wraps these vine leaves around them, and then they just fucking jump off head first.
Oh, what's the elasticity of the vines? Because like I remember stories of this is like an urban myth of a guy that jumped off using a rope off a bridge, and he disappeared. And when they pulled the rope up, just his leg was attached, and he went into the river. And he was gone. And I don't know if that's true or not, but obviously, like they were drunk, obviously as well. But like, I think people were under the false impression or illusion that you can just use any material as long as you're attached to it, you'll be fine.
Well, the thing with this is there is no elasticity. There's an actual technique to this where they sort of dive, but they dive forward, and at the bottom of that tower is a slight sort of slope where they built up with mud as a sort of foundation. They build a mound and then build the tower on top of it. So you're sort of diving forward at an angle, and you have to dive far enough forward that the vine sort of tightens and acts as a brake, and then you just like splat into the ground a bit. But because it's on an angle, and if you've got the angle right, then you're sort of okay. you sort of,
none of this sounds safe.
Well, there's some. It's all to do with it's a ritual basically to celebrate the yam harvest, and it's performed in the summer on Vanuatu. Um, Vanuatu sounds like something Vic and Bob would say, wouldn't it?
It does, yeah.
But they believe that a good jump will increase the harvest of yams. I'm not sure there's any scientific evidence for that, but it's also an expression of masculinity, like I mentioned.
Yeah.
So it's to impress birds, really.
Yeah, so this guy smashed his face in and broken both of his legs. What a man! What a
Yeah,
dude!
yeah,
His T levels are through the roof.
yeah, yeah. He's he's uh he's the big daddy on campus. Is that the term? No, big
No,
dog
you
on
made that up.
campus. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I like
Yeah,
Big Daddy.
I don't
Big
know.
Daddy dog. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is kind of where bungee jumping started. Then I think someone that you're probably going to mention in your bit later on sort of developed it into the first modern bungee. And that was made in 1979. I think you'll see a picture of a more normal looking bungee. But this was the Oxford University Dangerous Sports Club. Are you aware of these people?
I have heard of them actually. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so they were just like a society at Oxford, really, that just started doing stupid things. Like they did the first base jump,
But
really.
like
They
burning tramps and setting fire to a £50 note in front of
and shagging a pig's head. That
yeah,
was
shake it. Yeah.
that was a different club, I think. Although there might have been some crossover. So it was this guy, well, two guys, David Kirk and Simon Keeling, were the founder members of the Oxford University Dangerous Sports Club, and they started just trying wacky things, wacky ideas. And they introduced the idea of an actual bungee cord with some sort of recoil. And they did pretty well, really. Doesn't seem like anyone died doing it.
Okay. Good job.
Just a quick fact for you. Your chances of dying doing a bungee jump are 1 in 500,000. I've got a list in front of me of the most dangerous sports
Right.
by mortality rates, and surprisingly, bungee jumping pretty safe in comparison to a lot of stuff.
A lot of people die playing golf. I know that.
Yeah, golf and bowls are quite
Yeah.
high up there, more due to the boredom, I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. But of course, things do go wrong with bungee jumping. Welcome, our good friend Noel Edmonds. In the 80s, I sent you this picture, didn't I, of Noel?
No.
So, did I not?
No.
Oh, did I send
I've
you
got a picture of a police car in front of a crane.
Okay, all right. So in 1986, Noel Edmonds murdered a man. No, extreme.
Was it him?
Breakfast.
Was it him or was it Mr. Blobby?
No, it was pre Mr. Blobby. This was the BBC breakfast show, basically.
Bloody
Extreme
hell.
breakfast. Well, it was called the Late Breakfast Show. I don't remember
That's
it.
lunch, isn't it?
Yeah, it sounds like the evening news. It could be the late breakfast show, but it was extreme breakfast. And there was basically this sort of game. I don't know why Noel's getting the blame for this, really. Apart from it's Noel Edmonds, so it's nice to blame him for everything because he believes cancer can be cured by magnets. But basically, 1986, they set up this stunt with a young man who I've sent you a picture of, who was a hod carrier by trade. His name was Michael, and he was 24 when this all went wrong. The stunt involved a 120-foot bungee jump off of that crane, and it was in a game called Hang 'em High, which
bloody hell, that's
Hang
foreboding.
'em High, yeah. However, the clip that was attaching his bungee sprang open during the jump, and I don't think he even reached the bottom of the first plummet with the bungee. The clip just opened. So basically, he jumped off the top of a crane on live TV.
Wow.
Well, no, sorry, it wasn't live TV. It was actually a rehearsal, and it was meant to go live later. It was later revealed that the clip wasn't actually strong enough to hold the weight of a bag of sugar, which I assume this fella weighed more than a bag of sugar.
He looks like he did, yeah.
Yeah, so that was the end of him, unfortunately. Following the ordeal, Noel resigned from the show. He said at the time he didn't have the heart to carry on. Unfortunately, a couple of years later, he found the heart to carry on television and came back with some other shitty shows.
Yeah, I'm a little bit traumatized by his presence on TV during my childhood, and the things that came out of his mind, like Mr. Blobby Blobby. But
Yeah, it was.
there you go. I've got another image here that I've titled Bungee Arse.
Yes. So as if bungee wasn't dangerous enough, I came across this fella quite recently. I actually saw it on YouTube. He's a Russian guy, obviously. He's peeled off his tits and drunk off his head. And just to make it a bit more interesting, what they've done there is attach some meat hooks through his arse.
No, why?
Throw, because it's Russia, man.
Don't they have Netflix in Russia?
You either do this or you go to war.
Those are the options.
Yeah. So there's a video of this which you can find on YouTube.
Right,
just looked up Benji. That's you. I looked up bungee meat hook arse, and it showed me the video.
Yeah, I'm not putting that into my algorithm. Thank you.
He's claiming that he's some sort of performance artist. He's not. He's just a drug addict, alcohol-riddled Russian with a load of mates who said, "Let's do this. This sounds good." And when they push him off, there's a slight second where you see his face, and it's like one of those. And now he realised he fucked up.
Yeah, yeah.
And then he falls, and it's all good. And then the tension comes into those meat hooks.
So he didn't rip his ass off then?
No, he's swinging. But I imagine he's got an old lady ass now, all long and saggy. I don't speak Russian, but I think he was saying, "Please get me down. This hurts a bit." So yeah, they've made bungee even more ridiculous, and yet another reason I won't be doing that one, especially. But yeah, it's mental. Bit of bungee jumping. Don't like it. Won't do it.
Well, before we transition, I'm going to take this guy's arse off the screen. Before we transition into my British offerings, because Britain is a very strange place. A lot of what inspired me to look a lot of these up is a good book which I have misplaced. I've put it somewhere else. I was about to read the title off. It's called, the title is No Pie, No Priest, and it's I can't remember the name of the author, unfortunately, but I'll put it in the description. It's like a collection of ancient sports from Britain, and we have a bit of a kind of folklore tradition of playing really weird games. You don't really notice this until you go to another country and you start exploring the things that they do in their spare time, like these mad Russians that are doing arse bungee. But I think it is very much a cultural thing. Like we do a lot of sports in the UK that I think are reflective of the weather. So a lot of stuff outside on a patch of grass. Like everything happens on a patch of grass in England. Every war was on a patch of grass. Every time I got laid, it was on a patch of grass. It's all about the grass. And as an introduction, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Cotswold Games, because that's where my first sport was initially held. Before I explain what the Cotswold Games are, I'll ask you a question. Why do you think people do these extreme sports? Why do you think they take part in them? What's the motivation?
I don't know. Like, people talk about being an adrenaline junkie, don't they? I think it was part of that. I used to date a girl who was a freestyle kayaking world champion.
Yeah.
I think you met her, did you?
Yeah,
Hazel,
I
some time ago.
came to your almost wedding.
Yeah. She and she loved it. I didn't see the point of it really. It was cold and wet. But I suppose there's a level of skill, isn't there, where you're sort of dicing with the chance of death and maybe uh, beating death on occasion must
Yeah.
make you appreciate life a little bit more. I mean, I find that just by waking up most days. I think that's
Oh, I made it. I made it again.
yeah, got through the night. Sharon hasn't stabbed me. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know. I think there's part of that. A bit of escapism. I suppose also like the people I've met when I was around that kayaking world back then, it wasn't an Olympic sport. They would. I remember at the time they were talking about making it an Olympic sport, much like BMXing was and is now, and skateboarding. And their main reason for not wanting it to be an Olympic sport was that they get drug tested, and
Yeah.
everyone was like massive stoners.
Yeah.
So none of them wanted to get drug tested. I guess that changed and people became a bit more serious about it, and then sponsorship deals and that kind of thing. I've known a lot of skaters over years as well,
Yeah, me too.
and surfers. I worked at a surf place, lived in Cornwall for a bit. Um, yeah, known quite a few skaters. I've got a friend, Neil, actually, and he's a bit older than me. And he started well, he used to skate as a kid and he took it back up when he was 40. And I was like, dude, no,
Is that a
I
good
couldn't
idea?
do it. I think he was quite good when he was a kid and he like poodles around quite happily now. But like Lily got a longboard that I used to ride around when I was younger. I dug that out. It's fucking terrifying now. They call it the thier. I think it's just realizing that if you fall off, you are going to break something now because you're a bit older.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
My
but that puts me off.
my bones are made of glass. Like you used to bounce, but it's the sounds change. Everything changes. I mean, we said this before. Like even when you're just putting your shoes on, you start making noises like oh, and just like straightening your leg out. It's not supposed to crack. It never used to crack and crunch all of the bones and the cartilage. I don't know what's happening inside of my skin. It's like a big old bag of broken parts now. But in the past, I used to be all rubbery and bouncy. So yeah, I do have the fear of falling.
Actually,
Go on.
in preparation for tonight's pod, I was talking about work a little bit, and everyone in the office figured that I did an extreme sport, and I was like, why? And my mate Jez said, because you look like a failed retired skater. Because of the way, I guess, the way I dress or
Yeah,
whatever. I guess it's true. I'm like, no, I
yeah,
don't. He goes,
yeah. You do
you
though.
wear Vans every single day. I'm like, yeah, because they're comfy on my poor feet, my old man feet. They're very comfy. So yeah, I don't know.
I did know a professional skateboarder in Leeds. I think he was on the Olympic team, but he had to be hospitalised because he only drank Red Bull, and he only ate Haribo. So he's just like subsiding on pure sugar and caffeine
Yeah,
for about
yeah.
15 years, and then he got like a stomach ulcer that exploded, and he went to the doctors.
Extreme.
And they were
Yeah.
like, yeah. And the doctor was like, what the fuck are you doing? What are you doing?
How
You're
are you
just,
alive?
it's just ridiculous the way that you're living your life. But anyway, I think you touched on some very true points there about maybe masculinity, demonstration of masculinity or metal, because like you say, a lot of women are involved in extreme sports. It's in fact. Some of the sports from the Cotswold Games were exclusively for women. In fact, some of the sports across the UK were exclusively for women, and they were brutal as much as the men's sports. There was one that was just involved milkmaids, and feel like it's got a slightly kinky undertone. There was some lord that put that together because he wanted to get a load of milkmaids to wrestle each other. And it's a bit pervy, but it was also quite dangerous because they're like hurling these metal balls at each other. Oh, the other reason for this type of endeavour or entertainment, I think, is demonstrated in the Cotswold Games, and it's something that it goes back to Greek and Roman times. You know, the Romans did it with the gladiatorial battles, but
oh yes, sorry, you just reminded me of something else we've got to talk about at some point. But yeah, gladiatorial battles, yeah, yeah.
Okay, this is another aspect of being old, is that you have to turn the corner of the page when you have an idea by going just making a noise. Otherwise, you forget, and then like 3 minutes later, you're like, oh, what was I? Wait, oh no, wait, no, it will come to me, and you have to have that conversation that's not actually a conversation. Well, the Cotswold Games was made by a lawyer called Robert Dover in 1612.
That him on a horse
in Gloucestershire, I think it is actually. Yeah, it is. And he was endorsed by King James I, who this is the quote that kind of set the foundation for the Cotswold Games, and I think had quite a strong influence on folklore or folk sports in the UK. He said classical mythology and Renaissance culture. Oh, hang on a minute. Am I reading the wrong quote? This is another thing that happens to you when you get to middle age. You don't know what you're doing. No, sorry. I was reading the wrong paragraph. He said certain days in the year would be appointed for delighting the people with public spectacles of all honest games and exercise of arms. And the idea behind it was give them circus and bread and circus. The Greek and later the Roman concept of allowing the general public to have one day of fun awarded to them and paid for by the state, so they'd be better behaved the rest of the year, and they wouldn't mind giving 90% of the stuff that they'd farmed. So yeah, in the Cotswold Games, they had a whole host of nutty events. One of which I'm going to talk about because there's so many of them. I'm not going to go into too many details. They had, for example, sledgehammer throwing, fighting with swords and cudgels, loads of different.
What?
Fighting with swords and cudgels.
A what?
A cudgel.
A cudgel.
A cudgel is a small sword.
A small sword?
Yeah, there's a little one. It's a mini one.
Right. Okay. I learned a new word. Coursing
with hounds. And then the one that we're going to talk about now, which is shin kicking. It's actually one of the oldest sporting events in the UK.
Yeah, and I've seen shin kicking.
Have you been to an event?
Yeah, they do it in Cornwall. I guess it's not too far from the Cotswolds, is it?
No, it's an event that's quite popular throughout England, throughout the UK, I'd say. You get it in Scotland as well. Anywhere where there's just nutty people, because alcohol helps. It's brutal. So shin kicking or shin diggings or purring, as it's also known. It's just two people, as you can see in the image, that wear a kind of loose fitting jacket, and they hold on to each other's shoulders, and they just kick the shit out of each other's shins. I'll go through the history a little bit. It came from the Cotswold Games 1612, which ended in the 1850s. So that event went on for over 200 years. But they've recently revived different games, and the Olympics itself, I think, has come back as well. So the technique is that each round you face each other, you hold onto the collar or the shoulder, and you have to strike your opponent's shin with the inside of your foot or your toes, and it's basically just you have to endure the pain. The loser has to. I like this. This is very English. The loser has to cry out "sufficient" when they've had enough. When they've had enough. Yeah. And there's a referee, also known as a stickler, which is where the phrase comes from, the stickler. And yeah, there's a lot of modern competitions that are held all over the country. Legend has it that some shin kickers in later years wore steel toe boots during the competitions. And they'd
Ooh.
also they'd strengthen. This is nuts. They'd strengthen their shins by hitting them with hammers and other metal objects, just to kind of
Oof.
build up a tolerance. Um, but
I
yeah,
seem to remember making stuff straw up their
yeah,
trousers,
you're allowed to have a
the
little
kind
bit
of
of padding.
shit shin pad,
Yeah,
like a really crap shin
really
pad.
rubbish one. Um, but it's been exported. They have it in the States as well. It happens in different places around the world. And
Is kabaddi the same?
no,
Do you know kabaddi? I thought that
yes,
involved kicking shins. No,
it's
maybe not.
slightly different.
Sorry, I
Um,
think there's a ball as well, isn't there, in
yeah, there's
kabaddi?
a ball involved in kabaddi, kabaddi.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one of the oldest sports in the UK. It's not the oldest extreme sporting event. I'll get to that later on. But for now, let's go over to your next offering.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say I love all that stuff, like all them weird things that, like, if you're on a day trip to a village, especially in like the southwest or anywhere remotely
Hmm.
coastal, like you can go to any village on a summer weekend and some weird shit will be going on,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I love that about our country. Um, yeah, I'm sure you get it in Spain as well,
yeah. No,
like
yeah, absolutely. That's
the
a
running of the bulls. Maybe that's probably something.
They play Petanka, which is a game where you have to launch a ball, just throw a ball. Fronton, which is where you have to hit a ball against the wall with your hands.
Hmm.
Paddle, which just looks like. Well, the first time I saw paddle, I thought they just didn't know how to play tennis, but because you use like it's like a retarded version of tennis. You're not allowed to say that, are you? Um, but yeah, yeah. There's loads of that stuff in Spain. I just on the screen showing you the field where it takes. Like I told you, it's just a patch of grass. That's where the Cotswold Games happen. Lovely, isn't it? Nice view.
Yeah,
And then
lovely.
people get together and kick the shit out of each other for a day to please the Lord of the land.
Nice.
Next.
Well, I was going to talk about the home of extreme sports, which is the X Games. The X Games for a long time was the energy drink driven version of the Olympics. It started in 1995 was the first one. Um, you can see the change in the logos there from the first one to the current one.
Hmm.
And it's basically a celebration of everything that is sort of what would you call it, left field sports. So you got your BMX, you got your skateboarding, you got your inline skating, you've got various other things, and then uh, the the Winter X Games also came along out of the X Games. And that's a massive deal as well with your snowboarding, your freestyle skiing. Have you ever seen border cross?
Border
That's really
cross.
cool.
What
Yeah,
is that?
you snowboard, don't you? Do
Yeah,
you?
okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
got
So
a
it's like
snowboard.
right. So it's like you're on a track, and there's like six of you trying to get from one end to the other downhill, not uphill. That'd be really slow. But you're allowed to like push each other over and stuff a little bit, um, and that I think a lot of them are really really cool sports. But going back to my slightly negative take on all of this, I'd like to talk quickly about 10 tragic deaths that rocked extreme sports.
Okay. All
Um,
right.
so not all of these happened at the X Games, a couple of them did. Um, and it also just quickly goes through some other extreme sports. Base jumping. Do you know what base stands for in base jumping?
Um, be a special educationist.
No. Building, antenna, span, and earth. Obviously, base jumping is you jump off something rather than jump out of a plane. You jump off something, preferably quite high or high enough, either with a parachute or a wingsuit. Wingsuits have become quite uh, more popular recently. It's mental, that old wingsuit stuff. Oh,
That happens near
again,
me.
does it?
Yeah, I went out to a place called Riglos, which is where they filmed the opening scene of Kingdom of Heaven, where they're going towards that castle. It's very close to where I live. But there's a big rock that they call the Thumb. And first time I went there with one of my friends who lives there, we were walking and we just heard this thum. I was like, what the fuck was that? And it was the guy like opening. He'd jumped off the top of this rock, and when you open the wings, if you're plummeting, it just makes this kind of slap, like a pop sound, like a small explosion. There was like three of
Oh, a
them up.
bit like
They're
a little
nutters.
sonic boom. Yeah.
Yeah, they you have to climb. They've climbed up there. Some of them free climbed, and then they just get to the top and just launch themselves off. Nuts! Like I don't.
Hmm.
What makes people do that? I might have. No, I wouldn't have done that when I was younger. I certainly wouldn't do it now. I think it would make so much more of a mess if a middle-aged man hit the ground at 100 miles per hour. Then, like, if you're young, you might actually come out of it with just, I don't know, grazed knee or some broken bones. But I just imagine myself as being a kind of bag of jelly that just, and I wouldn't want to put that on anyone. Anyway, please continue with these horrific, tragic stories of death.
In 2016, the world's number one base jumper was a chap called Uli Emmanuel, probably French. Uh, Basically, didn't do his parachute right, and you don't have any backup parachute because you're not high enough, really, and you wouldn't have time. So he died in 2016, which
You
is
sound
quite sad.
bored by the fact.
Yeah, I won't go through all of them. There's quite a few base jumping ones. It seems like a daft sport, if I'm completely honest. Uh, One that was a bit sad. Jay Moriarty. Have you ever heard of him?
Yeah, he's the enemy of Sherlock Holmes.
No, he was an American surfer. He died way back in 2001. Sorry. Um, have you heard of the Mavericks?
The
It's a
band.
no. All right. Okay. It's the biggest waves, basically. The Mavericks is a break in northern California.
Hmm.
Um, that's like been super famous. You get like sort of 60, 70 foot high waves there. Um, and he was a what they call a big wave surfer. Um, and basically got trounced in a practice session.
Hmm.
The thing with the Mavericks is they come in sets, and they're very sort of repeated sets. So if you go down on like wave one, then you've got like three more waves that come over you. And sadly, he just drowned.
Hmm.
And he was, by
Yeah.
all accounts, a very nice guy. Um, but yeah, another surfer, Jimmy Hall. Don't know if you're aware of him.
Hmm.
He was a shark expert as well. I think you can see where this is going. Uh, he was uh, he was doing a shark documentary, but also a very big surfer off the island of Ahu, which is a Hawaiian island I've just mispronounced.
Excellent.
Yeah, but filming a documentary about surfing with sharks. What happened to him? Got
Eaten by a
eaten by a
shark,
shark. Yeah,
obviously.
typical. Um, Another guy, a bit more recent, Mark Sutton. You ever heard of him?
Wasn't he the Moors murderer?
No, he was. Do you remember the 2012 Olympics
Yes,
in
vaguely.
London? Do you remember James Bond jumped out of a helicopter
Oh
with the
yeah,
Queen?
yeah.
Yeah. Well, this guy, Mark Sutton, was that James Bond.
Uh-huh.
Um, so he jumped out of a helicopter with the Queen.
With the
Not
Queen.
really. With someone dressed as a queen. I think
Okay.
that's how it went. They
Right.
were in like a helicopter, and then he parachuted into like the thing, and then Daniel Craig popped up again. You know, he was like a stunt double. Um, anyway, yeah, so that went well. Next time didn't go so well. Unfortunately, it was
He
also
jumped up instead of down. You can't do that in a
yeah.
helicopter. Very
It was
dangerous.
it was at a wingsuit event called Helibase 74. I can't believe there's been 74 of them. And unfortunately, this one was all filmed. Uh, so he jumped out. He was traveling about 200 kilometers an hour, uh, and he sort of veered off course a bit and flew into a bridge, which is
Bloody hell.
pretty nasty, isn't it? That photo there on screen, that's from the X Games. That was a fellow called Caleb Moore who was riding one of them snowmobiles and attempting to do a backflip. These things weigh about 2 tons, some of them,
Wow.
and yeah, you shouldn't flip
No,
them.
don't do
Anyway,
it.
it landed on him, dead. Right, you see, there's a recurring theme here.
Oof, yeah.
Uh,
I ran
Barry,
myself over once with
did you?
a quad bike. Yeah, like Brian Harvey from E17. It was in Spain. I was doing a work away thing. I was helping this guy build a cave, and he had a quad bike and a dirt bike. He was like, "Do you want to come out on these? Just go mess around on the hills for a bit." And I didn't really know what I was doing. I'd never used one before. But I went up a hill and I tried to. I don't know how I did it. I threw myself over the handlebars, and then it just went over me and parked on me. And I was like, get help! He had to run over and pull it off me. I was all right. It was just humiliating.
My final one.
Sorry, yeah, go on.
What year did you move to Spain?
2011.
Right, you might know this person, Dario Barrio.
Oh my God, he was my neighbour. Yeah, yeah.
He was a famous Spanish TV chef. Uh, like chefs nowadays, they go and do documentaries about other stuff, don't they? Like Gordon Ramsay did one about making cocaine. I don't know if you saw that. It was good. And like Jamie Oliver's always like pissing someone in the government off about Turkey or something. Um, anyway, so this Dario Barrio was a TV chef in Spain. I can't believe you don't know him.
Is it
Call
barrio
it,
with two R's?
yes.
That means neighbourhood in Spanish. His
Right.
name is literally
Okay.
Dario Neighbourhood.
Dario Barrio Dominguez.
Okay,
I
yeah.
don't know if they refer to him
Dario Sunday Neighbourhood.
okay, right, okay. Uh, but anyway, so he was filming a documentary, doing some daft stuff that chefs shouldn't. Went wingsuit diving. Again, wingsuit diving. It's not safe. Play golf. Um, and yeah, he was doing it with two other people. They pulled their parachutes. He forgot. A lot of chefs are drunk quite a lot. I'm not saying he was. I'd hate to be
Hmm.
disparaging about the young man.
Yeah, you were a
Uh,
chef, weren't you?
but yeah,
Yeah,
I'm drunk.
yeah.
But yeah, he just didn't open his parachute and flew into the side of a mountain and apparently pretty much liquidized himself,
Bloody
which
hell.
is pretty awful. Anyway, the moral of my story, which I'm done with now, is do an extreme sport, you'll probably die.
Yeah, don't do it. Stick to table games. Right, I'm gonna ask you what you think these folks are doing. This one's for you, actually. I put this one in especially for you. Especially for you. Hang on, let me find it. There. Um, what do you think? What do you think these two are up to? This is another British game, a British event. It's a relatively modern one, but it's one that I feel that I can totally get behind, and I'm even.
I think I know what this is.
I'd like to come back to the UK just for this. To be perfectly honest, it looks amazing.
That
Yeah,
fella looks a bit like our friend Robbie McAllister
he
as well.
does, doesn't he?
I think that might be the wife carrying world championship.
It's not. It is
What?
gravy wrestling. So
Oh!
that liquid that is covering those two contestants is in fact delicious gravy. Which for
Right,
anyone
but
listening,
that's up north.
anyone outside of the UK, gravy is a kind of brown meat sauce. What's gravy made out of? It's made out of meat, isn't it? Meat
Yeah,
juice.
meat, bones.
It's
Yeah,
nice. Yeah,
Bisto.
you're right though. It's in Lancashire. It's in
Not have gravy in Spain?
no, We don't actually. That's why I explain it, because I live in a gravyless state. It's quite depressing. But yeah, they have
I'll
to
bring
use
you
other
some
liquids
disco.
for the wrestling over here. So yeah, it's in Stacksteads, Lancashire, or Stacksteads,
Of course, it
Lancashire, as you
fucking
say.
is. Yeah.
It only started in 2007, so it's relatively new. But I just think that it's kind of indicative of the quirky folk sports of yesteryear that we have all across the UK. It's like you say, you go to a village in the summer, and there's always just some weird, very local event that's taking place that you've never seen before.
Mm.
And I do think it's something that is part of the British culture. Anyway,
That's a very northern thing. Can I tell you a quick gravy story about a northern lady? When I was in rehab, I was a few months in, and a lady arrived, and I could smell the vodka, like
Jesus,
when she was outside the front door.
yeah.
And anyway, she came in, and she was absolutely hammered and probably near detox, but was in there. Came in anyway, and she came downstairs and said to one of the girls, "Ooh, a shit must send, and it looks like gravy."
Oh my
And
God.
yeah, a bit like that. Oh God, yeah. I hope it's not in my bucket. But anyway, she didn't last very long, that lady. But
Well,
it was a very, very northern thing to say, I felt.
yeah. I mean, that's how they say hello to each other, isn't it? I just want to make it clear that despite the fact that they are wrestling in meat juice, this is a very serious sport that does involve a referee. There's a
Cool.
picture on screen of one there. I don't know why he's doing what he's doing, but I suppose it's just for a love of the sport and a desire to make sure that he gets the right angle so he can be just in his decision making
Also,
process.
that's the actor out of Limitless and The Hangover. Why
Yeah,
is he? What's his name? Why
because
is he doing
he
that?
invented it. Look, it's what happens when you're a multi-millionaire, and you think, what am I going to do with my spare time? I'm just going to make a sport so I get to watch ladies wrestling in gravy. That's what he's done. There's one more image I just wanted to show you from not that one, from the gravy wrestling.
Bradley
There's
Cooper. That's who I'm
somebody
thinking of.
doing an actual wrestling move here, and I want you to name it for me if you can. What would you call this, or would you need to invent a new gravy-based name for this wrestling move?
The slop drop.
The slop drop. I love it. Yep. I was gonna. Yep. Okay.
I'll keep that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that looks pretty good.
Delicious.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd like to wrestle in gravy. Do
It
you think they
depends.
have two rings? One's like a vegetarian gravy.
Oh God. I hope not. How do you even make vegetarian gravy from like
It's a thing.
broccoli
We have it.
juice?
No, it's just
Oh,
like it
sorry to
just
hear that.
tastes like normal gravy, but it's never seen a cow.
I'm gonna quickly dive straight into the next one, which is quite similar because it does involve immersing yourself in liquid, and maybe you've heard of this, but this is the bog snorkeling
Yes.
event competition, which has it's taken on quite an international. Much like I'm not going to mention this. I don't have any images to put on screen, but I think a lot of people abroad are familiar with the Gloucestershire cheese rolling, and that attracts like a huge international crowd. People come from. I think the guy that won last year was from Japan, and in the women's it was an Australian girl. It's the same with this bog snorkeling. A lot of people, they like these quirky sports, and they like the fact that it takes place in, like I say, a patch of grass somewhere in a foggy, boggy field. This happens in
Norfolk, is it?
no, this is in
Oh.
Wales. This is in
Oh,
Wales.
right. Yeah.
I'm
What,
gonna.
what, how do you win it? What do you have to do? Just like swim the
Well, see,
birds?
you have two consecutive lengths of a 60-yard or 55-meter trench that is cut into the peat. So they don't use I don't know if they use an existing trench or not. I imagine that they just make it, and it's just the shortest time possible wearing like a snorkel and a diving mask and flippers. Those are the things that you're allowed to wear to assist you in your swim. But it's also tradition to wear fancy dress. So you can see this woman has got a little rubber ducky on her back there. I'll give you a couple of other people. There's a woman, she's just got a little crown of shit on her head. And it's a relatively new, well, I'd say it's relatively new. It's from the 70s. It started in 1976 in Wales, in a town that I'm now going to woefully mispronounce. Lanverted Lanverted Wells in Wales.
Right.
So that's it, really. You're
Is it a double L? That's a
yeah, it'd be like a Y, wouldn't it? Be Clanverted Wells. And some of the competitors have come from all over the world. Like I say, it's even been exported now to other countries. They do it in New Zealand. They do it in Ireland. They do it in Finland. They do it in China. They do it, all over the place. The world record, I should say, is 1 minute and 44 seconds. By Peter Beaumont, who was a Welshman. And what about the women's? I don't know if the women's world champion was Casey Squibb from Dorset, England. Well done to her. And she did it in 1 minute and 34 seconds.
Casey Squibb?
Yeah, you know Casey Squibb.
Yeah. Fucking hero.
It's just a horrible.
That's an interesting thing, isn't it? Like extreme sports people.
Yeah.
Like I know, like X Games and stuff. Like you got your superstars, and you Tony Hawk and that. But people don't do this kind of thing to be a superstar, do they?
No.
I mean, no one gives a toss, but you'll be a.
Well, you're the local hero. I think it's when you're living in a small
hero
community.
for a day, isn't it? Hero for a day. Yeah.
I mean, that is literally the point of the Cotswold Games, is to be a local, a community hero. You get a lot of some of the sports I was reading about that I'm not going to include today because we don't have time. These people were, they get free drinks for the rest of the year, and like people would really respect you for being capable in like throwing a hammer over a tree competition. And there's loads of shit like that. There's so many of them. It's nuts, and a lot of them are hundreds of years old. But like I say, many of them do come from the Cotswold Olympic Games. Have we got time for one more? I've actually got two more, but
yeah. I mean, there's something I want to mention, which you don't want me to mention, I think. And I really hope we've got a photo of this, because I said we were going to talk about it. But
go on. What is it?
The ancient extreme sport, but you had a brief foray into that. I remember you telling me about.
Yeah, I don't have my photo.
Oh, well, for those who are on the edge of their seats waiting to hear about this, Ben was a gladiator. And I don't mean a gladiator like which has just restarted on the BBC.
Has it really?
Yeah,
that's brilliant.
Yeah. On the BBC, it's weird, man.
Yeah. I'm trying to find it. Hang on.
Yeah, I'll talk about gladiators. So Ben mentioned earlier about the ancient Greeks and the Romans and that, and Glenn, who's Glenn? Ben had the chance to become a gladiator, and you bought a little helmet, didn't you? And you had a. What did you call that little sword? A cuddle sword. You had a little Ben-sized sword and a little helmet and a nice vest.
None of this is true.
It is. And you showed us where you did it in Zaragoza. There's like an old Colosseum or something, isn't there?
I did
do. Car park built on it. And from what I remember, it was very hard, wasn't it, Ben? And
it was bloody hard.
You could only do it once, because what happened, Ben? What happened to your English skin?
Oh yeah, I got a sandal Roman sandal shaped sunburn on my feet, and I just recently shaved my head, and it was the hottest day of the year in this town next to Zaragoza in the desert, and just like 3rd-degree burns on my bonds, like top of my head was peeling. It was horrible.
You got sunburn, so you weren't allowed to be a gladiator
I've
anymore.
got a video of that somewhere. So what happened was one of my students, I had a new student, and he had a very low level of English, and obviously always asking. Well, I asked him what he was. Every class I'd always ask him what he did at the weekend, so he practiced talking in the past. And then one day I was sat in it because I took the classes in at his house, and he had this Roman helmet like on a shelf. I was like, what's that? Do you collect stuff? He's like, oh, I'm a gladiator. I was like, I've known you for 6 months, and every fucking class I ask you if you've done anything interesting, and you say no, not really, and you're now telling me that you're a gladiator. And he was like, yeah, I had to do training and all of this stuff. And he went to show me some videos. I remember this more than the gladiator experience itself.
Training.
He wanted to show me some videos. There was training, man. I went to gladiator training.
He's a LARPer.
No idea.
You went LARPing.
But when he went to show me some of the videos of his bouts, he went to his camera reel, and it was just absolutely full of porn. And I don't know if he was, I don't know if he knew about that or if he was like he didn't care or whatever. But there was so much of it that he was just scrolling through it for ages. I was like, fucking hell, this is. I wonder how you got any time to be a gladiator. You're obviously just masturbating constantly. But he invited me down to the training, and they had just this.
Right, and you were like, oh yeah, for porn, I'm in.
I thought I'd give it a go, in for a penny, in for a pound, and I just turned up at this warehouse in the middle of this like semi-abandoned industrial estate, and there were just a load of like social outcasts. No, they just dressed in. They had a really good selection of gladiator. Like they have the proper kit, like because they were. I found out that there's these legions like all over Spain that get together and do like full kit reenactments, and they fight. They don't train to. It's not orchestrated. They actually fight each other. And there's this guy that like taught me some Roman boxing, which is mad because you're allowed to use your elbows. You can hit people on the top of the head. You're always trying to strike them on the top of the head with your elbow. I ran with the warm up was just running around this warehouse holding the shield. The shield is like 20 kilos. It's pretty heavy going. But I didn't get to actually fight in public. I did some bouts in training.
Because of a sunburn.
No, because you have to start off as a slave. So I start hanging.
It sounds so gay. You went to a warehouse with a load of men and polished their helmets.
I don't think it's very funny. It's actually very serious. I think you need to show a little bit of respect for my status, which is slightly higher than yours. Actually, I will mention.
Slave.
But your son, you didn't even make it to be a slave, so I don't know what you're talking about. Hang on.
I'm sorry. I'm sure it's very extreme.
I'm trying to get this image of me in a slave sack.
Oh, please.
Onto this is from the day when I got sunburned. My job on that day was flag bearer, so I was the flag bearing slave, and I just had to stand there with this and I was trying to position the flag to cast a shadow onto the top of my head because I was just burning, but I wasn't allowed to move, and I had to, and the bout was going on for ages. One guy went to hospital because he got stabbed in the eye. There's with the knife, the tip of where they are blunted, obviously, but the tip of it went through the visor part of his helmet, and it jabbed him in the eye. He had to go to the hospital. He was fine. Hang on, let me see. Look, there we go. I've just taken a photo of this. This is a Polaroid image of me as a Roman slave in a genuine Roman ruin. There was an old amphitheatre there, and you can't see, but I do have 3rd-degree burns all over my body.
It's a pretty dress.
It's literally a sack. I was literally in a potato sack. But I never rose above the ranks of slave, unfortunately, so I didn't make a very good gladiator.
You know,
It
you
was
know
fun.
the guy who got stabbed through the visor in his eye and had to go to hospital. Did his mum let him go again, or was
Nah.
that
I'm gonna find the video because the local news were at that event. This was a fair few years ago, by the way. So it was the first time I saw a drone. In fact, they filmed a lot of it
Oh, yeah.
on a drone. I'd never seen a drone in operation, but yeah, it was a good event. Swinging back from that, I'm gonna try and fit in. Right, I'm gonna give you two options. Right, we got Haxie Hood or Horse versus Man.
Horse versus man?
It sounds a lot better than it actually is, unfortunately. Because
Oh, well, you pick then. If it's rubbish, do the other. I don't mind.
Horse versus. I'll tell you what versus man is super fast. It's literally just a race where men and nowadays women run to try and defeat a horse. But
Well, you can't do that.
Okay. See, you're entering into the sport of it. That's exactly what this conversation here is. Why this event exists.
That guy over front's fucked.
You think he's fucked? Check this guy out. Hang on. Oh no, not him. Well, yeah, him as well. Do you know where it happens? In Llanfairpwllgwyngyllgogerychwr, Wells, the same town that produced the bog snorkeling. And it came out of a local pub when two guys were drunkenly rowing in 1980. A pub called the local landlord called Gordon Green. The pub was called the Newid Arms. They were saying that a man could race over certain terrain, a horse, and win. And the landlord said, "You two are full of shit. Why don't you put it to the test?" And they were like, "Yeah, all right." And where drunken people just agree to things. And then the next day, the landlord was sober. He woke up and was like, "Guys, go on then, off you go." And they're like, "Oh yeah, I don't really feel that good." It's okay. Oh, it's fine. If you're not a real man, just say so. And so it kind of went down that path, and they ended up creating this event where men race against horses. So the first human one. I'm just scrolling down the list of events. Right, so 1980. I'll keep going from year by year. 1980, horse. It goes like that until 2004, when the first human won against the horse. What
was wrong with the horse? Did the horse die like in the Grand National?
There's loads of horses and there's loads of humans. This is the thing. It's just the terrain. So that was Zoe White on KBJ. That's the horse rider, and the winner, the human winner, was Hugh Lobb, and he came in at 2 hours and 5 minutes, and the horse came in 2 minutes later at 2 hours and 7 minutes.
All right, so it's like a tricky course. I was thinking like
it's just rough terrain.
A man could beat a horse
in a fight.
No, like on the London Underground, like a horse would be rubbish. It wouldn't fit in. They can't go upstairs, can they? No, they can go upstairs, but they can't go downstairs. Yeah, maybe they put some stairs in for the horse, and that would slow it right down. Yeah. But yeah, I was hoping it was going to be a fist fight.
Yeah, me
drunken
too.
People going, "I could beat up your horse." Yeah, knock that horse right out. And then the horse with some gloves on its front legs, standing on its hind legs.
Isn't there a story about because it's in Conan the Barbarian, and Arnold Schwarzenegger punches a camel and knocks it out when he's drunk. But I thought that was based on a true story, wasn't it?
I don't know.
It sounds like the kind of thing he'd do.
What, Arnie?
Yeah, do an Arnie voice.
Knocking out a horse.
I was going to do an Arnie voice then, but I backed out because I thought I don't know how to do it.
Get to the chopper.
Yes.
I don't know. That's
You're looking at me like that. I will punch you in the face. That was pretty good.
I don't know. I don't think you could knock out a horse. Their heads are massive.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true. Right, I'm going to very quickly go to my last.
Do it.
Last
Do it.
Event. It's the Haxie Hood Haxey Hood, have you heard of it?
No.
It is the oldest sporting event in England. So from the 14th century, it happens in Haxey, Lincolnshire, and it's a
Is
game.
it a mad football fight?
Yeah, kind of. There's another one that is like that as well. It's quite a similar kind of. This type of game exists in lots of different places. It's like a large football scrum, which they call the sway, and you have to push a leather tube which represents the hood. They think that originally it was a hood.
The hood?
The hood, yeah.
Like the hood, the neighbourhood, or
like a hood that goes on your head.
All right, right. So it's not like gang warfare. It's not like the Bloods.
No, it's not like the Bloods and the Crips.
The hood.
It's a leather tube that represents a hood, and they have to get it to one of 4 pubs in the town
Right.
where it
I knew
stays.
pubs would be involved.
It's a big piss up. Where it stays until the next year. It's played on the 6th of January, so unfortunately we missed it, which this year, which is the 12th day of Christmas, as I'm sure you know. The history. So it's 14th century. Maybe you've heard this story before. Lady de Mowbray, wife of an Isle landowner, John de Mowbray, was out riding towards westward side on the hill that separates Haxey, and as she was riding over the hill, her silk riding hood blew off her head, and 13 farm workers who were just randy as fuck rushed to help her, and they were chasing the hood all over the field because they're like, ooh, if I get that back to her, that's gonna
touch that posh lady's head.
Exactly.
There might be a stray hair in it.
Give it a good sniff. Finally, one of them caught it, but he was too shy to hand it back to the lady. So he gave it to one of the others to give back to her, and she thanked him and returned the hood and said that the man that gave it to her had acted like a lord, whereas the worker who had actually caught the hood was a fool. Just to insulted him. So she was so amused by it, the act of chivalry, that she donated 13 acres of land on condition that the chase for the hood would be reenacted each year. So they started reenacting it.
Just posh people,
just
innit?
posh people, yeah. It's mental. Like,
just chase my hood. I find it entertaining.
And just abusing the lower classes who are producing the food on her land that feeds her and her family and her children. Anyway, the guy on screen is the fool. So he's the guy that caught it but was too shy to give it back to her. And he does a little speech at the beginning of the event. And here's the Haxey Hood costume that's traditionally worn. From the 1400s, man, it's mental. Here's an image. We have a history of blackface in England.
Right, I was going to ask the question.
People in modern times get a little bit offended by it. So it is tradition that the fool has a dirty face because he was a field worker. That's the point. It represents poverty. But I don't know if you can see this doll that's on the screen at the moment. Yeah. He looks a little bit startled
with his wonky eyes. Yeah.
But anyway,
there's so many of ours where they blackface up. The mumbles in Cornish tradition, that's like some sort of game, like Morris dancers, but they're blacked up. I don't get it. But also, this fella's eyes, they're the most off-putting thing. And he's got a load of beer mats as a crown. I don't think that's a legitimate 14th century representation.
No.
He's also got a Rastafarian string vest on.
Well,
it's a real mix of cultures, that. Cultural appropriation all over the place.
It's a very violent game, as you can imagine, because the locals take it very seriously, and like we're saying with these other sports, it's a kind of it's the community embracing the communal spirit, because it kind of
at the bottom of that picture there appears to be a pile of legs.
yeah.
That have
Well,
been
that's
ripped
the
off.
other thing, that if you fall down, then they break your
Just
legs
rip
off.
your leg off.
Because it's a sign of weakness if you
There's a little
unfall.
child on the right,
Yeah,
like just on the right quarter. Like,
mate.
help!
This is from 1928. They were kicking the shit out of each other in 1928. Look at that. You think that's the hood that's being thrown up in the sky. That's somebody's arm that's been torn off, torn off at the shoulder. Some
Yeah,
young child.
I like the guy in focus on the far right, just going, "Yep, another arm, another arm, lad."
Another arm for the fire. Chuck it on the fire. Here's a guy who's in the sway. As you can see, I mean, this for me feels like a Friday night out in Leeds. A flashback when I was looking at this picture. It does look quite a lot like that guy's dead, but I don't think he is. But because it's such a close press in the sway, if somebody falls, like half of the crowd falls with them. So a lot of people do get crushed, but there've been no fatalities. I'll just give you a little end of the fool's speech. The fool finishes his speech with the traditional words that the crowd chant along with him, and they go like this: "Hus again, hus, tune again, tune. If a man meets a man, knock him down, but don't out him." Okay, right, which translates as house against house, town against town. If a man meets a man, knock him down, but don't hurt him.
Oh,
That's quite nice, isn't it? It's quite gentle.
yeah, another patch of grass there as well.
Yeah, and it's just basically, it's got everything. It's got blackface, it's got violence, it's got people ripping each other's limbs off.
Good old Blighty.
Yeah, you can't fault it. Mad shit going on, and then once they've got the hood back to the pub, they all just get properly pissed up, which is essentially what it's all about, isn't it? Because they pretend it's about the sporting event, but I think we know what everyone's there for in the UK. Serious problems. Yeah, and that is the end of the Haxie Hood.
That was a lovely little tour through extreme sports. I think yours, the more traditional ones, seem a lot less dangerous in a way, apart from maybe for your liver. But yeah, I don't know what I think about extreme sports. Like I say, I've known people who've done them and that, and it seems to be sports for those that are slightly on the edge of society in a lot of cases. You look at skateboarding, that's more a culture than anything else now, isn't it? And I think people that possibly don't always fit within the norms. I've enjoyed little bits of extreme sports. Sometimes like watching it. More so now, I think, as I'm older, I think I'd rather watch it than partake.
Yeah.
But sometimes, I play a bit of golf every now and again. And that last hill at Rushcliffe, it's the 18th hole is on a hill. That feels a bit extreme. And Dad never lets me go in the golf cart for some reason. So I don't know. I think I'm happy to watch from afar and enjoy rather than partake. How about you, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, they have, like you say, their own folk versions here in Spain. And I think it was last year I went to Tipo de Gato, which is very similar to the Haxie Hood in a way. It's just a giant tomato fight, and they have a fool. The fool gets released from the town hall, and he has to make it all the way to, I can't remember what the other building is, but it represents the local lord pardoning one prisoner every year. And they used to throw rocks, but now they throw tomatoes. And it's just a big old tomato fight. I'll attend that kind of thing. No problem. It's fun. You get covered in tomato, and then you walk down the small lanes of the village, shouting water, and the people open their windows and chuck buckets of water over you, so you get clean. And then like in England, everyone just gets pissed up. So I like, a bit of folky kind of activity, but no, I don't think I'm going to be jumping out of any planes or off bridges or any of that stuff.
What
Those
about
times.
Pamplona? Pamplona?
Well, running with the bulls.
Yeah.
Pamplona.
Would you do that?
No, no. Definitely not.
They're like land sharks, aren't they? It's like swimming with sharks. Why would you run with a load of balls?
It's some people are just, because that happens Pamplona is the most famous one, but it happens in almost every village. And there were several incidents last year because there's a new generation that are perpetually distracted. There was a video of a girl who was just on a fucking mobile phone on the corner. Have you seen that? Have you seen it? This ball just runs past her.
Well, maybe. Is she like a larger girl?
No, she's not. She's just there, like, looking at her phone, and the ball runs past her, and the ball, like, kind of stops and double takes, like, are you fucking kidding me? And then he just gives her one, and she just evaporates. She flies up into the air, and you just see a shoe, like, drop down. She just disappears into the stratosphere. But
filming it for Insta or something.
Yeah. Oh no! It was the fact that there was a ball running in front of her was just too boring for her. She was like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna check the gram." But yeah, I don't know. I prefer to watch. I'd let other people hurt themselves for my entertainment. There's no need for me to get involved. I'd be a passive, extreme sports,
watcher,
spectator.
Yeah. Spectator. Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've solved whatever we were setting.
Done. That's another one done. Tick.
Yeah, tick. All right. Well, I enjoyed that, Ben. Thanks so much.
All right. Well, I'll speak to you soon. I love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.
Medically